And the one thing I'll caution with Virginia Tech fans, because a lot of people are jumping to conclusions on the timeline one way or another this morning on Twitter, right? This is a great hire. This is a bad hire.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. We don't know. Everybody thought that Justin Fuente was a home run hire 2 full years in. We thought it was a great hire. He won 19 games in 2 years, right? There's no way of knowing until we kind of see this all play out. There are things to like. There are things to ask questions about, but that's going to be the case with any hire that Virginia Tech makes with the current state of their program. But I do like some of the things on the surface, though, with Brent Pry. If you're going with a first-time head coach, I mean, there's a lot to like there. Get a really highly skilled defensive guy. Get yourself a guy who knows how to recruit, period, let alone the state of Virginia. The staff's going to be so crucially important on the offensive side of the ball. Can't emphasize that enough. Not too concerned about the defense.
No.
I have some concerns about the offense just because I don't know yet. I don't know who the hires are going to be, but it'll be interesting to see how he fills out the staff.
Well, the good news is with Brent Pry, a guy who has been on James Franklin's staff, both in the SEC at Vanderbilt and now at Penn State for a number of years, he's going to have those big-time Power 5 football connections that Justin Fuente didn't quite frankly have. We're not going to see a situation where you're going to end up with an offensive coordinator in Brad Cornelsen who had never actually called plays even at the Group of 5 level. I think he'll be able to leverage those connections with a bigger staff salary pool than Justin Fuente was given and, hopefully create a well-rounded program that, plays to his strengths, but also make crucial hires that maybe, kind of coat his weaknesses. He's not an offensive guy. Like you said, Mike, all eyes are going to be on that offensive coordinator hire, really how that offensive staff plays out.
And I don't know who the hires are going to be on offense, right? I don't know enough about the Brent Pry coaching tree to know. And this is all broken this morning. I'm sure I'll be more well-read on it this afternoon. But as of this morning, I don't know who the hires are going to be on the offensive side of the football. That's a huge question. That's something that Pry's going to have to answer. That's something that, quite honestly, Whit Babcock probably assured Brent Pry of when he took the job. What kind of pool am I going to have to hire my assistants? Right? That was probably a big question that Brent Pry wanted answered because he is one of the top assistants in the Big Ten. Right? So it's no secret that he's probably had other opportunities before to jump and has selected not to do that. He's probably had, opportunities that he's looked at and almost taken right before. And maybe there was some make or break questions in an interview. Whatever Whit Babcock told him, he was confident in, and 51 years old, that he was going to be able to have his first head coaching experience be a successful one. So let's see what the staff is. Let's see what the assistant coaching pool is. Those are numbers that'll start to filter out. As usual, David Teal and those guys will have it. They're the ones that always get that information. So we'll figure that out pretty quick.
I'm kind of looking right now at the Penn State football coaches and the assistant coaches specifically, and I'm not seeing any names that jump out at me. I don't see him bringing Mike Yurcich with him, right? I don't think that's going to be a thing. So I don't know that the offensive the offensive coordinator, maybe possibly, I don't know a whole lot about Taylor Stubblefield, but he is the offensive recruiting coordinator and the wide receivers coach at Penn State.
He was so good at Purdue as a receiver. Yeah. Oh my God. He was so good as a player.
So, that could be a potential name to look for. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing names, but at this point, I don't know that his OC comes from Penn State. I would be surprised if it did. It'll be interesting to see, though, where that person comes, because I think, Mike, you already mentioned it, right? Defensively, this will be fine, right? Honestly, Pry could keep the defensive staff that we currently have at Virginia Tech, and this would be fine. The question is on the offensive side of the ball. Who do you bring in to be your OC? And do you have to tab that person as maybe, associate head coach or something like that in order to entice a big name into the mix?
I agree with you, and this ties in. This is from David Teal, as I literally just said. David Teal gets this information before everybody else. So David Teal says, to complement recent facility upgrades, expect Hokies to markedly increase assistant coaches' salaries and recruiting infrastructure. Brent Pry was among 2 coordinators who emerged in this search. Sources expect him to retain J.C. Price. So
David Teal gets all the info.
That's why he's a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Pays to be the legend. I mean,
he gets the information.
I mean, you look at his time at Penn State. We have our guy Gavin here with the comment. Penn State fans are sad to see this guy go because if you watch Penn State football over the course of the last few years, at times those offenses have been lackluster at best, and they've been able to, remain at the top of the college football world in that conversation at times because Brent Pry's defenses were solid enough to keep him afloat. Right. Again, it comes down to this offensive coordinator hire. How is this staff built out? Everyone, like Mike said, is going to rush to judgment one way or another. This is a solid hire. This is a guy that has a chance to be successful, and the decisions that are made over the course of the next month and a half are going to give us an idea of what that roadmap looks like. Even that opening press conference is going to give us an idea of what Brent Pry's vision looked like. Because at the end of the day, if Billy Napier, the big, hot, everyone wants him candidate was off the table, if an experienced guy like Dave Clawson was off the table, and Whit was kind of forced to go to options B, C, and D, maybe, the interview process, the conversations that were had with Whit Babcock probably carried more weight than they would if a more nationally relevant candidate was, available at the top of the list and wanted to come to Virginia Tech. He looked at a number of coordinators in play, and Brent Pry impressed the most.
Let me throw a name out there to you guys just to chew on. Steve Ensminger, offensive coordinator at LSU, not going to probably be the offensive coordinator at LSU in about 24 hours if everything
if he still is.
Maybe now.
Yeah, maybe even right now.
That's a decent one.
If you look at, so right now I'm on SaturdayDownSouth.com. I want to make sure I give them credit for this. They have a list of the top 25 offensive coordinators in the nation right now. Ensminger is currently sitting at number 19. So, you're not talking about like Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day are on the list, Mike Leach, Dan Mullen, Mike Norvell. Like, you're not talking about those guys, right? You're not talking about guys that you can't potentially pull. But at 19, Graham Harrell, 22, the OC at USC, also potentially a name to watch out for. I know people are messaging us about Joe Moorhead here. I mean, are those names that move the needle for you guys as far as, if we could get that guy here, that would be the home run hire as an OC?
Moorhead, I think, is going to be the head coach at Akron, it sounds like. So he's probably right out. I like the Ensminger thought. I mean, if you want to swing, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money, for sure. But you're going to have to pay these assistants a lot of money to make sure Pry is successful. And it seems like Whit Babcock has dedicated resources to that, and understands kind of the changes that need to be made from an infrastructure standpoint with the football program to kind of fix the issues that Virginia Tech ran into with Fuente. Okay, here's a comment. This is a very Vic Fangio type hire. What does this mean for Justin Hamilton's future? I don't anticipate Justin Hamilton will be returning.
No.
He's not going to – it's probably pretty unlikely he's going to be Pry's defensive coordinator. I don't think that Whit Babcock is going to put qualifications on Brent Pry similar to what he did with Fuente. Where, Fuente had to keep Bud Foster on staff, which worked out in the near term, but Bud didn't really want to recruit anymore, which I understand. Like, he was getting up there in age, and he's like, I don't really want to go out on the road and recruit. I think that was to Virginia Tech's detriment in the long run. But I don't see Justin Hamilton staying on staff, not being the defensive coordinator, and taking a demotion. It's just not how it works. So, he's not going to stay on staff and watch somebody else run the defense he was just running this year. So I think it's pretty likely he leaves.
I mean, Justin Hamilton maybe didn't do enough to be the indisputably retained defensive coordinator for Virginia Tech, but he probably did enough to guarantee at least something close to a Power 5 defensive coordinator job down the road. It's just part of his coaching journey. He's going to move on. I mean, I'd give him – what would you give Justin Hamilton's job as a defensive coordinator in his 2 years at Virginia Tech, knowing that, year one was kind of a wash with the lack of spring practice and all the COVID issues that they had during fall camp? You give him a B and let him move on.
Yeah, I'd say I'd give him probably a B. And, look, the one thing you can point to, Andrew and I mentioned this on our podcast, on the Hokie Hangover podcast last night. We mentioned this and it released this morning. So
our now irrelevant podcast.
Yeah, we're now recording another one at lunchtime. So good. That quickly dated. The one thing that we mentioned regarding Justin Hamilton was, if you were to make a list of things that had gone right for Virginia Tech this year, Justin Hamilton's second half adjustments would be on that list. Tech didn't always start the games the right way, but it's indisputable that Justin Hamilton's halftime adjustments were pretty solid all year. So he's going to have an opportunity somewhere else. I mean, I don't know if he'll be a Power 5 coordinator right away, but he'll have more opportunities. He'll be a head coach someday. Paul, I know you've been on that. You've been on that pedestal for a while, and I agree with you.
I mean, I think here's the deal, right? Like, the Hokie Nation, my message to you would be this: don't fret about Justin Hamilton. Justin Hamilton will land on his feet. You guys were saying B. I was going to say a B+. I think, it's one of those deals where you almost totally have to throw last year out because of all the COVID issues and not being able to have spring practice and not being able to implement things. But, now you look at, if you just look at this year as a standalone, I mean, the numbers don't lie. They go from, I want to say, and I'm spitballing here, I want to say they gave up like 34 or 35 points a game last year, and it's down to like 22, so I mean, that number alone right there tells you that Justin Hamilton is going in the right direction. He'll be fine. And so will most of his staff. The rumor, I guess, is J.C. Price and where was it here now? Hang on. Hokie Twitter is going absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Smitty and J.C. Price both going to be retained on staff, which I think is, that right there, you want to talk about putting Hokie Nation in your corner. That's going to put Hokie Nation in your corner. That's going to give you a little bit more rope so that you can make other hires, because you kept the two guys that Virginia Tech fans really wanted to see on staff. And I really think it was a no-brainer. Like, to keep those two guys, that might be, if you're Brent Pry, that might be the easiest decision that you have to make, keeping those two guys. You find roles for them. Maybe it's their current roles. Maybe it's something a little bit different. Who knows? But that could be.